spectrum frontiers. Riding hard, standing tall. From the heart of the people to the rise and the fall. Full spectrum frontiers. Where the stories ignite. Guarding tomorrow with grit in the fight.
This is Full Spectrum Frontiers. If you're new, welcome to the tribe. We take the headlines you scroll past at midnight, the stuff that shapes wars, wallets, and what our kids will inherit, and we translate it into straight talk you can use. If that sounds like your kind of show, do me a solid. Tap like, drop a review, and share this with one person who would argue with you at a backyard cookout. That is how this thing grows. Today, we are stepping into a fight most people never see. It is not about tanks or tariffs. It is about the elements under your feet that make the world hum. I am talking rare earths and critical minerals, not rare like unicorns, rare like the magnets in your phone, the guidance systems in our missiles, the motors in our EVs, and the guts of almost every radar we count on. If oil powered the 20th century, these elements power the 21st. Here is the situation. Beijing just tightened the spigot on some of these critical materials. Washington is now sprinting to build a strategic stockpile and rebuild parts of an industrial base that we let atrophy. On paper, it sounds like procurement. In reality, it is a test of national resilience. Whoever controls the materials pipeline gets leverage over semiconductors, energy storage, next-generation weapons, and the pace of innovation itself. You can measure power by how many ships a nation sails. You can also measure it by how many kilograms of high-purity oxides it can refine each month. This episode is not a panic attack. It is a playbook. We will look at how we got here, what levers the United States can pull right now, and how regular people, small manufacturers, and state and local leaders can do more than sit on the sidelines. I want you to walk away with clarity and agency, less doom, more direction. Here is what you can expect. First, we will map the new terrain. What are the key minerals? Where are they mined? Where are they processed? And why does that middle step matter more than most folks realize? Then we will talk about the Pentagon's response and what a serious stockpile really means. Not a press release, actual timelines, industrial choke points, and trade-offs. Finally, we will zoom out and look at the emerging order. Friendshoring, allied capacity, smarter recycling and substitution, training the workforce. We need to do any of this at scale. I will give you a short list of actions that matter from Capitol Hill to your local community college. I am a realist with a hopeful streak. We let parts of this supply chain drift overseas. That happened. We can fix it. That is the beauty and burden of a free people. We build, we course correct, we compete, and we do it without losing our souls in the process. So grab a coffee. Or, if you are listening on a ruck, keep that pace. We are going to peel back the layers on the war beneath the surface. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly why these minerals matter, what is at stake for national security and everyday life, and where the opportunities are for builders who want to step up. Before we dive, quick ask. If this show helps you think a little clearer about the world, please rate and review Full Spectrum Frontiers on your app. It takes 10 seconds, and it helps us reach the people who need this most. All right, let's get to work. Section 1. The ground beneath the Cold War. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. We don't fight wars with ideals. We fight them with elements. And right now, those elements, neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, yttrium, read more like the ingredients list on a mad scientist's lunchbox than the foundation of our modern lives. But they are the bones of everything from the smartphone in your hand to the F-35 jet screaming over the Pacific. Here's the kicker. We used to be good at this. Back in the Cold War era, the United States mined, refined, and stockpiled rare earths like a prepper before Y2K. Mountain Pass, California, once a dusty little operation, was the world's leading producer of these elements. Then came the 1990s, the age of globalization, low prices, and corporate efficiency. We outsourced the dirty work, literally. Processing rare earths requires chemical separation that isn't exactly kind to the environment, and environmental regulations made it expensive here. So, China stepped in, offered cheaper refining, looser standards, and a government strategy that saw far beyond profit margins. By the time America realized what had happened, Beijing controlled nearly 90% of the global rare earth processing capacity. Let that sink in. Imagine if one nation controlled 90% of the world's oil refineries. You'd call that a national emergency. In the world of semiconductors, energy systems, and defense tech, that's exactly what this is. And here's the nuance that most headlines miss. It's not just about mining. The dirt itself isn't rare. It's the refining and separation that are. You can dig up all the ore you want in Wyoming or Texas, but unless you can refine it into high-purity oxides for magnets or precision alloys, you're still dependent on someone else to finish the job. Right now, that someone else wears a red flag with 5 stars. This is the silent battlefield of the 21st century. It's economic warfare by way of material science. No shots fired, just levers pulled on global supply chains that can stall industries or cripple military readiness. When China recently announced new export restrictions on materials like gallium and germanium, the world noticed. Both are crucial for semiconductors, night vision systems, and advanced radar. That was the warning shot. The new restrictions on rare earths? That's the escalation. So how did we get here? Short answer, convenience. We let economics trump strategy. We convinced ourselves that efficiency was security. We were wrong. But before we turn this into another round of blame China, we have to admit that this was a team effort in complacency. Western corporations chased cheap production, policymakers chased the illusion of global harmony, and voters didn't see the trade-off because the shelves stayed full. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because every overreach creates opportunity. The same way OPEC's oil embargo in the 70s forced innovation in energy efficiency, China's stranglehold could end up lighting a fire under America's industrial base. Already, the Pentagon's Defense Production Act authorities are being used to rebuild processing capacity here at home. Companies in Texas, California, and even Alaska are dusting off projects that were mothballed decades ago. The Department of Energy is investing in alternative separation technologies, using membranes, bioleaching, and even plasma refining that reduce the environmental impact. But, and it's a big but, these things take time. Building a mine is a decade-long process. Setting up a refinery? Another few years. So the question isn't just, can we do it? It's, can we do it fast enough? This is where the conversation gets personal, because this isn't just about geopolitics. It's about the entire American mindset. We've spent decades optimizing for efficiency instead of resilience. Just-in-time supply chains saved pennies on the dollar, but they also left us vulnerable to black swans and bureaucrats across an ocean. If there's a silver lining, it's this. The rare earth showdown might be the wake-up call that brings back something we've lost. The spirit of industrial grit. The belief that a free people can innovate, build, and refine better than any command economy, even if it takes time. In the next section, we're going to walk right into the Pentagon's war room. We'll talk about what a billion-dollar mineral stockpile actually means, why it's more than just a pile of rocks, and how defense contractors and policymakers are quietly racing to secure the building blocks of modern warfare before the next supply chain shock hits. Because make no mistake, the new arms race isn't about missiles, it's about magnets. Section 2, Stockpile Panic, inside the Pentagon's $1 billion bet. All right, so we know the problem. China holds the keys to the world's rare earth refinery, and the US has spent the last 30 years pretending that was fine, as long as Amazon Prime stayed on time. But when Beijing pulled the export control trigger this summer, the Pentagon's reaction was instant and loud. $1 billion. That's the number. The Department of Defense announced an emergency plan to expand its strategic stockpile, essentially a war chest of minerals. But this isn't your granddad's stockpile full of canned beans and diesel drums. This is gallium, neodymium, tungsten, titanium, materials that make up everything from drone rotors to hypersonic missile casings to the magnets that let your F-35 whisper instead of roar. Here's what's really going on behind the curtain. Inside the Pentagon, the Defense Logistics Agency, the quiet arm of the military-industrial machine that keeps track of everything from bullets to beryllium, is now acting like Wall Street traders. They're bidding, buying, and contracting at a frantic pace. A DLA memo leaked a few weeks ago showed an internal target: 6 months' worth of operational supply for 15 key minerals by 2026. That sounds manageable until you realize we don't even produce some of those minerals domestically yet. So what do you do when your strategic opponent controls your ingredients? You improvise. Washington's approach right now is a mix of 3 moves: buy, build, and buddy up. Buy means using Defense Production Act authorities to fast-track purchases. They're buying not just from U.S. firms, but also from trusted allies like Australia and Canada, nations rich in ore and poor in Communist Party oversight. Build means reestablishing the industrial ecosystem here at home. That's why you're seeing headlines about MP Materials reopening and expanding Mountain Pass in California, Linus setting up shop in Texas with DoD co-funding, and small upstarts in Wyoming, Alaska, and Idaho experimenting with new extraction tech. These are the first green shoots of a revival. But again, mining takes time, environmental approval, and a hell of a lot of political will. Buddy up is where it gets geopolitical. The Pentagon and State Department have been quietly courting countries like Namibia, Brazil, and even Vietnam to diversify the global rare earth network. The logic is simple. If China wants to weaponize scarcity, the U.S. wants to weaponize friendship. It's friends whoring in action, spreading out production among nations that share our security interests. Still, let's be real. Stockpiling is not a long-term solution. It's a tourniquet. You don't build a healthy supply chain by hoarding minerals in bunkers. You do it by cultivating an ecosystem that mines, refines, and manufactures efficiently, safely, and competitively. The real challenge is deeper than logistics. It's cultural. America forgot how to make things at scale. For years, our best and brightest were told to learn code, not chemistry, to design apps, not alloys. The result? A generation of brilliant problem solvers who can optimize a digital ad campaign in seconds, but couldn't tell you how to separate dysprosium from neodymium if their Tesla depended on it. But I'm not cynical about it, because the story's turning. You can feel it. Programs like the DoD's Defense Industrial Base Resilience Grants, the CHIPS and Science Act funding, and new university-industry partnerships are pulling material science back into the spotlight. We're training a new generation of metallurgists, chemists, and engineers who see national security as their mission field, not just their major. Here's what's wild, though. The same stockpile effort that sounds reactive might actually be the spark that launches a renaissance. In the 1940s, America stockpiled aluminum and rubber, and that investment laid the groundwork for decades of aerospace dominance. In the 2020s, our equivalent might be rare earths and advanced magnets. But we also have to talk about risk. Because the moment you announce $1 billion buying spree, the vultures circle. Market speculation spikes, lobbyists flood Washington, and small-cap mining stocks go from penny shares to pump-and-dump targets overnight. We've seen this before in defense procurement. Money moves faster than oversight, so if we're going to rebuild responsibly, we've got to keep it transparent. Audit the contracts, prioritize sustainability, and actually think 20 years ahead instead of 2 election cycles. And here's a question we should all be asking. What happens if Beijing plays the long game and we play the headline? If they restrict just enough exports to trigger inflation, but not enough to justify decoupling, we could end up caught in a gray zone trap, bleeding economically without ever firing a shot. That's why this isn't just about minerals. It's about mindset. Resilience over convenience. Redundancy over efficiency. Grit over greed. So yes, the Pentagon's stockpile is an act of self-preservation, but it's also a mirror, reflecting how dependent we've become on systems we don't control. If we treat it as a wake-up call, not a band-aid, it could be the first real step toward rebuilding the muscle of American self-reliance. Up next, we're going to zoom out to the big picture, the grand chessboard, because this rare earth crisis isn't just about minerals and magnets. It's about power, in the purest sense of the word, who generates it, who controls it, and who shapes the next world order. We'll talk semiconductors, AI warfare, EV revolutions, and why the next global superpower might not be decided by armies or nukes, but by who owns the periodic table. Section 3. The New Alchemy. Power, Silicon, and the Global Reset. All right, let's zoom out. Because this rare earth story, it's not really about rocks or stockpiles anymore. It's about control of the modern world's nervous system, the circuitry that makes everything work. From your phone's haptic buzz to a hypersonic glide vehicle screaming at Mach 10, let's call it what it is, the new alchemy. We've traded philosophers' stones for silicon wafers and superconducting magnets. The transmutation isn't lead into gold, it's dirt into data. And whoever masters that transformation wins. Now, look around. Every major conflict in history has revolved around resources. The British Empire sailed for spices. The United States fought wars shaped by oil. Today, the battleground is measured in nanometers and nanocrystals. When China tightens rare earth exports, it's not just messing with America's defense contracts, it's squeezing the arteries of innovation. Think about it. Semiconductors, electric vehicles, renewable energy, quantum computing. All of these depend on materials mined from the earth, refined through complex chemistry, and woven into the fabric of modern life. And while Washington debates budgets, Beijing is playing empire builder with a slide rule. They're buying up lithium in Africa, cobalt in the Congo, and building processing plants in Indonesia. They're not playing checkers. They're laying the foundation for a century-long monopoly on the hardware of progress. Meanwhile, in Arizona, Texas, and Ohio, the U.S. is trying to reboot its semiconductor and advanced materials industries. It's a noble effort, the CHIPS Act, tax incentives, workforce programs, but it's like rebuilding an orchestra after the instruments have been sold off. The conductor's ready, but half the violins are in Shanghai. Still, here's where optimism kicks in, because we've been here before. Every time America's back is against the wall, we innovate our way out. When Japan dominated steel and autos in the 80s, we reinvented precision manufacturing. When OPEC strangled oil supplies, we launched an energy tech boom. When the Soviets raced to space, we didn't just catch up, we leapt ahead. This is that moment again. The question isn't whether we can compete, it's whether we remember how. And part of that starts with reimagining what power even looks like. In this new era, it's not about who has the biggest army, it's about who controls the inputs to everything that army depends on: missiles, drones, AI targeting systems, stealth coatings. All of them hinge on materials most people can't even pronounce. The next superpower isn't necessarily the one with the most soldiers. It's the one with the cleanest supply chain, but it goes deeper than economics. There's a moral layer to all this that's often ignored. China's dominance didn't come without cost. Environmental devastation, forced labor concerns, corruption baked into every shipment. If America is serious about competing, it has to build something better, not just faster. Ethical supply chains, cleaner refining, true collaboration with allies that share our values, not just our business interests. Because make no mistake, the rare Earth showdown isn't just a trade dispute, it's a worldview clash. Command economies versus free markets. Centralized control versus decentralized resilience. Convenience versus conviction. And that brings us to the most important takeaway. National security isn't just something the Pentagon manages, it's something we all participate in. It's in the engineers at a magnet plant in Texas, the students studying material science in Montana, the machinists in Michigan building drone parts, and yes, even you, the person listening right now, paying attention when most people tune out. We can't rebuild the full spectrum of American power by outsourcing curiosity. Awareness is the first line of defense. So what do we do from here? We start local. We support domestic production, not as a slogan, but as a strategy. We reinvest in STEM, vocational trades, and materials science. We hold policymakers accountable when they trade long-term sovereignty for short-term savings. And we cultivate a generation that values building over consuming. Because if there's one thing history teaches us, it's that the nations that control the materials control the future. But the ones that value freedom control destiny. America has been the underdog before. And every single time, we came roaring back not because we were the cheapest, but because we were the most determined. The rare Earth showdown may be the latest test, but it's also an opportunity, a chance to rediscover what made us exceptional in the first place. Grit, ingenuity, and faith that we can outthink and outwork anyone, anywhere. So yeah, China's playing the long game, but so are we. And we've got something they can't engineer in a lab: the will of a free people who build because they believe in something bigger than profit or control. The war for the elements might just end up being the spark that reignites the American spirit. So, let's bring this one home. What we're witnessing right now isn't just another trade spat. It's a test of who still knows how to build. China's playing the long game, tightening control over the very elements that fuel our technology, our defense systems, and our future industries. But here's the thing. America's at its best when its back's against the wall. Always has been. The rare Earth showdown isn't the end of the story. It's the start of a new chapter. One where we remember that resilience isn't born in comfort. It's forged in pressure. One where we stop asking, can we compete? And start saying, watch us rebuild. If there's one takeaway I want you to leave with, it's this. The frontiers of conflict aren't just on battlefields anymore. They're in factories, labs, classrooms, and boardrooms. The future belongs to the nations and the people, willing to think long-term get their hands dirty, and innovate with purpose. So, whether you're an engineer, an entrepreneur, or just someone who cares about where this country is headed, this fight matters to you. Because it's not just about minerals, it's about sovereignty, it's about independence, it's about whether we let convenience define our destiny or whether we choose to take it back. If this episode gave you something to think about, please take a second, like, share, and review Full Spectrum Frontiers. It's a small action that helps this mission reach more people who still believe in the American idea, that we build, we adapt, and we endure. Until next time, I'm Bennett Tanton, reminding you that the full spectrum of conflict isn't just out there. It's right here, in how we choose to live, work, and fight for what's ours. Stay sharp, stay free, and I'll see you on the next frontier.
Carry the fire through shadows and storm. Voices of yesterday guiding us on. Echoes of duty, the call we still hear. Building tomorrow with courage, not fear. Stand your ground, keep the watch through the night. Guarding tomorrow where freedom's alive. Through every trial, the truth will endure. Full spectrum frontiers, steady and sure. From fields of the past to horizons unknown, the seeds that we plant are the future we own. Stories of valor, of lessons we've learned, a legacy carried, a torch ever burned. Stand your